welcome to Studio 5. Thank you so much for your company. One of the world's fastest athletes is here to show you how to run the mile you're in. We also have the story of an all-American high school football star convicted of a crime he didn't commit, as that story now makes its way to the big screen. And we have a bright spot for you from singer and songwriter Andrew McMahon. So let's begin, as we always do, counting down the top headlines in the world of uplifting entertainment.
At number 5. So are you ready? Breaking news from Chance the Rapper.
Chance the Rapper's debut album. Wow!
Revealing his very first album here on The Tonight Show. And 2 more well-kept album secrets.
My name is Chance the Rapper, and I will be releasing my debut album on July 26th, entitled The Big Day.
At number 4.
You girls ready to go?
Yes! I have no idea where we're going though.
NBA star Steph Curry takes us for a ride with his daughters.
What do you call a cow with no legs?
What do you call a cow with no legs? I don't know.
You know.
Ground beef.
And the journey is quite musical.
Want to hear music?
You want to hear the music?
Yeah.
Ryan, you want to hear the music?
Yes.
Are you sure?
In this YouTube post that's seen nearly 5 million views, Steph writes, "We've done this 1,000 times, but this is the very first one on camera. You'll be back with lead vocalists Riley and Ryan. Ham fam at heart."
Sing it now.
You'll be back. Soon you'll see. You'll remember you belong to me.
You'll be back.
We're going to pick back up at number 3 in the countdown in just a bit, a little later in the show, actually. Ryan Hall is the fastest American half marathoner. He's retired from the track, but he's now running a race to end poverty and to inspire others. He's sitting down with us in Studio 5.
You simply can't measure a Ryan Hall performance on the same rule or the same measuring stick as everybody else.
Ryan Hall is among the most accomplished distance runners in the world, posting the best American times in the half marathon and marathon, and representing the U.S. in the 2008 and 2012 Olympic Games.
I wasn't timing like how fast I was going. I've actually kind of gotten away from that because I find that I've been a slave to the watch for a long time.
Retired from the running world, Ryan's written an inspiring book, Run the Mile You're In, Finding God in Every Step.
I just have to begin, though, with the change in you physically since running. What happened?
I get this a lot.
I know.
I had a funny moment actually where a TV commentator, he was in the elevator with my wife and I. This was after I'd retired and gotten into weightlifting. And he saw my wife walking. He's like, "Hey, Sarah, how's it going?" And then he's like, "How's Ryan doing?" And I was standing right next to her, you know, and he totally just didn't even recognize me. So kind of to answer your question, what happened was your running is so catabolic. It just strips your body of everything. It doesn't need to go like this for a really long time, you know. And I just felt like it's time to start giving back to my body. So I got into weightlifting, and it's also too just a way for me to stay true to who I am. Like, I just love to push myself physically, you know, but I was not liking it anymore in running. Like, my body has kind of said no mas, like that's enough, you know. So it became time for me to get back to it and got into weightlifting. From like, I went from retiring from running to the next day being in the gym and being super weak and super small. I was 127 pounds. This was 4 years ago, and then got into weightlifting, and I had nowhere to go but up, you know. I was so bad, I was so weak that, you know, now it's nice to like feel somewhat strong and be a little bit bigger, and my energy's much better, and I feel like I did give back to my body and in a really good, you know, spot with my energy and being able to be a dad and be all over the place. You know?
Nice, nice. Now, the book that you've written is Run the Mile You're In. What encouraged you or inspired you to write a book?
So Tom Dean, he's the VP of marketing at Zondervan. He's also a runner. He emailed me like 10 years ago. I was like, hey, have you ever thought about writing a book? You should write a book, you know? And so, and I was like, yeah, I've always wanted to. And I started probably like 10 different books, you know? Like I had like email drafts, like book number 1, book number 2. And like they're all like a chapter long, right? It's like, so I would start writing and I was like, the timing just doesn't feel right. You know, it feels like my story's still in the telling. So it was actually after I ran the World Marathon Challenge with Pastor Matthew Barnett, which is 7 marathons, 7 days, 7 continents. And that was kind of like the bookend of my career. That 7th marathon in Sydney, I was like, I'm never running a marathon again. This is the last one. After this, I'm entering into a new season of life. So I got to the finish line in Sydney, got down on my knees, took off my shoes, left my running shoes on the finish line, walked away barefoot, never looked back. And then it did just feel like it was the right time for me to finally start writing, put all the things that God had taught me on my journey into paper so that other people can read that and hopefully glean some things from that as well.
You know, I love how this journey begins for you in terms of running, because you thought you were going to be like your dad and play baseball. And then God speaks to you?
Yeah.
What's he say?
Well, first off, it wasn't like thunder from heaven or something.
Right.
You know? It's like, it's one of those things where it's always easy to look back and be like, oh, God was totally speaking to me there, you know? But at the time, it just felt like a little seed of desire, like almost like an itch that I had to itch, where God's like, I want you to try and run around the lake. And I remember I was just looking out over the lake. We're driving down to basketball games. The kids are all bouncing off the walls in the car.
And this lake is how long for people watching?
15 miles
around.
But I'm glad I didn't live in like Michigan or something like that. That could have been a real long journey. But anyways, I remember just looking out over the lake and just feeling like God was just kind of like whispering in my ear, like, you should try and run around, you should try and run around. So I went from a kid who hated to run to going home, telling my dad what I wanted to do. And I'm very grateful for my dad's reaction, because now as a dad, if my kids came home, they told me they wanted to run 15 miles at the age of 13, having never run before, be like, no, that's not a good idea. Let's run like 2 miles and see what happens.
Yeah.
But my dad wasn't like that. He was like, no, if you feel like that's what God's telling you to do, let's go do it. So the next Saturday, we laced up our shoes and went out for a very long, slow, painful run around the lake. And again, God took something that I previously hated to do and shifted it into this like passion that I had for 20 years, trying to figure out how do I cultivate this talent that I've been given, and draw out the best of me and my talent.
For me, hearing from God comes at 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't run like you run, but I do run, and I feel like I have an appointment with God every morning at 5. It's like, okay, you wake me up, God, I will get out and run, and I will hear your voice. And sure enough, without fail, I do. So I'm wondering what the running experience for you is like. Is that also spiritual for you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, like, you know, the first time I heard from God was, you know, in that van, but the second time was after finishing that 15-mile run, and that was just something that it was my thin place, you know, where I could connect with God and hear from Him really easily. And there's something about being in motion, you know, and not having distractions around me, like not having my phone or any of that stuff, and just me and God out in the forest sometimes, you know. And when you position yourself in that place, it becomes a lot easier to hear from God. I wouldn't necessarily say easy, but it becomes a lot easier to connect.
The distractions are silent.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Ryan's new book is called Run the Mile You're In, and it's available right now wherever books are sold. And still to come.
I left behind my mother, a beautiful mother of 3, my football team, and a childhood dream.
A tragic true story makes its way to the big screen.
Brian Banks lost 10 years of his life. We have 10 months to clear his name.
Studio 5 takes you inside the life of Brian Banks.
Welcome back to Studio 5. The countdown of the best headlines in uplifting entertainment continues now.
At number 3.
There was another in the fire, standing next to me.
A mini-series from Hillsong United, sharing the emotional stories that gave birth to the songs on their latest project, United.
We ended up having some meetings about our son, and he got given his official diagnosis for autism. It kind of threw me into this tailspin where I think everything that I had known was like in question now.
And I know I will never be alone. There is another in the fire.
The mini-series is called United by Music, and it's available now on Spotify and YouTube.
When you lead this song, when you sing it, every single time, I see the scars, and you're revealing them in like a really authentic way.
At number 2.
Mr. Rogers, I'm here to interview you.
It is so nice to meet you.
We're getting our first look at Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers.
You okay?
Profiling Mr. Rogers.
Boyd, please don't ruin my childhood.
This piece will be for an issue about heroes. Do you consider yourself a hero?
A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood tells the story of the iconic children's television host, and it hits American theaters November 22nd. Here's a Studio 5 sneak peek.
Hey, I'm looking for Fred Rogers.
In here.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Please won't you be my neighbor? Hello, neighbor.
We'll continue the countdown in just a moment. Brian Banks is an All-American high school football star, but as great things are happening on the field, his life is disrupted, and he's convicted of a crime he didn't commit. The unbelievable true story is now playing out on the big screen. Here's your Studio 5 first look at Brian Banks.
Brian Banks signed with the Atlanta Falcons back in April of 2013. The linebacker's football career is short, but his journey to the NFL is long, filled with twists, turns, and pitfalls.
I was 16 the day my life changed for the worst. 16 when I became a product of the penal system. 16 when I was wrongfully accused of rape. 16 when the courts tried me as an adult. My final day of freedom, I was 16.
Banks is now an executive producer on the major motion picture, telling his story, with actor Aldis Hodge in the leading role.
By the time I was 16, I had the attention of the NFL. Don't move! But I was accused of something I didn't do. The system doesn't care about me.
But you didn't deserve what happened to you.
I got a claim.
I was on my way to USC on a full scholarship, and then I was wrongfully convicted of a crime I didn't commit.
Brian Banks lost 10 years of his life. We have 10 months to clear his name.
Justin Brooks is the founder of the California Innocence Project, helping people that have been wrongfully convicted of a crime.
My job in this film is to honor Brian and his legacy. Come at me with all these legal excuses about the system, about how the truth doesn't matter. The truth matters.
I know it matters. I know that. Okay, and that tape is extraordinary. I agree, but I can't do anything legally.
Okay, stop. Okay? You know what, man, forget the tape, okay? Because I see what's going on here. You're sitting there trying to figure out how to let me down easy again. Well, you know what? That's not going to happen. You want extraordinary? I'll tell you what's extraordinary about this case. I am.
Actress and comedian Sherry Shepherd plays Brian's mother in the film.
I remember saying to Brian's mother, how did you deal with all of this? And she said it was a lot of prayer.
I was 22 when I first saw freedom again. I had spent 5 years and 2 months locked away. My days now monitored, a GPS tracking device strapped to my ankle. And
and I'm expected to find work and live a normal life.
This is something that can happen to anybody. Anybody can be wrongfully convicted.
I am innocent, and the truth matters.
It's about lost opportunity, false accusation, and vindication.
This movie is to raise awareness about the flaws within our judicial system, but this movie is also about inspiring people that the only thing that truly matters is what you allow into your life and how you allow it to affect you.
Brian Banks is in American theaters August 9th. Now, before we go to break, it is time to say it in pictures. Here's this week's Studio 5 Snapshot.
There's not much time. You got to be miles away from here before dawn.
These are scenes from the forthcoming film Harriet. It's the extraordinary tale of Harriet Tubman's escape from slavery and transformation into an American hero.
God don't mean people to own people.
The film hits American theaters in November, and this photograph of the Harriet Tubman character praying is this week's Studio 5 Snapshot. Join us next. On tour with singer and songwriter Andrew McMahon.
I mean, it's truthfully the only thing I ever really wanted to do.
And see why he's such a Studio 5 bright spot.
CBN News, no filter, 24/7 news. Through the lens of faith, from natural disasters to breaking news in the Holy Land. We have access to stars in entertainment and to top newsmakers. We are fighting for your freedoms. CBN News, because truth matters. Become a CBN News member today.
Too often we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
And welcome back to Studio 5. It is now time to take a look at the final headline in this week's countdown of uplifting entertainment moments.
At number 1.
It's hard to say when there's no food to eat.
A good road to recovery for recording artist Tamala Mann.
Thank you for all your prayers. Oh, I haven't gotten up and walked yet, but that's coming in probably about an hour.
Who's sharing on Instagram she underwent double knee replacement surgery.
Instagram update. You're going home, but she's in pain. It hurts.
That's Tamala leaving the hospital in pain but still in good spirit with her husband David by her side.
And the Lord blessed me with someone who loved what I love. So we've really built, together.
And that's a wrap for this week's countdown. Andrew McMahon is multi-talented. He's a singer, songwriter, pianist, and vocalist, but he's also making an impact off stage. He's this week's Studio 5 Bright Spot.
Andrew McMahon began creating music the moment he learned to play the piano.
I mean, it's truthfully the only thing I ever really wanted to do. I started writing songs when I was a kid. I was, I think just turned 9 years old. And it was kind of like this puzzle piece that came together, as soon as I wrote that first song, it was like, wow, this is who I am. You know what I mean? It felt like unlocking my identity, I suppose.
He's recorded 3 albums with Something Corporate, 3 albums with Jack's Mannequin, and 3 albums with his current project. There are no signs of stopping.
There's nothing to me in this world that feels the same as connecting to a crowd full of people playing music.
Studio 5 joined him on tour for his newest album, Upside Down Flowers.
Upside Down Flowers, it was sort of like this thing that kind of fell out of the sky. A lot of it, I think, is reflective of Southern California and sort of why I live where I live and why I love the characters that I'm surrounded by on a daily basis. But yeah, it was a very freeing process to make the record.
Andrew's life took a sharp turn in June of 2005. Doctors diagnosed him with leukemia.
It was sort of this just complete 180-degree shift. And in a weird way, I think it was the definitive, like, ending of my youth. I think for as fast as I got better, I expected that I could just reclaim all of that stuff that was, you know, ahead of finding out I was sick. And what took me years to realize was like, no, your life is different now. You know, your consciousness is different. You think about things differently because once you see, you know, get so close to mortality, you just change, you know. And then I built this life post-cancer that after a number of years I started looking back and going like, oh, this is a good life.
A year later, Andrew began the Dear Jack Foundation to help children and young adults in their cancer battles.
Well, the mission is pretty basic. I mean, it's to advocate for adolescents and young adults who are facing cancer, so people who are 15 to 39 years of age. We want to give them a voice. We want to tell people that they are under-researched, that their social needs are rarely met in hospital and after.
The foundation has 2 programs. The Life List, to help patients set goals for themselves during treatment.
It's basically a list that we work on with them to give them bright days throughout their treatment to sort of, you know, help make it so you can have a good day in the middle of some of your worst.
And Breathe Now, a retreat for survivors and their partners as they restart their lives together after surviving cancer.
For me and my wife, it was a really, really difficult transition, figuring out, oh, how are we married post-cancer? Like, and what you realize is that the partners of survivors are oftentimes, you know, are dealing with just as much post-traumatic stress.
Dear Jack began as a campaign by some of his fans. It continues to grow.
I started bringing staff on and hiring some amazing people with, you know, with a skill set that I don't have from an organizational standpoint, to help bring that mission to life. And the organization has grown, I think, year over year by like between 25 to 100% every year.
And most recently,
this year alone, we raised nearly $1 million.
Andrew knows firsthand the importance of a strong support system.
Whether it be cancer, music, marriage, whatever it is, I just have a really, really amazing support structure. Like, I had the good fortune of a support system that was bulletproof, you know. I had about the best case scenario you could have for, you know, both social support and for medical support. There are very few people who are as fortunate as I was, you know, and even as fortunate as I was, getting on the other side of it, I was still totally lost. It makes me a good candidate to speak on the issue because it's very easy for me to see the gaps, even as a person who was so lucky. And so I feel now so empowered because of all of that support that I had, you know, to be able to look at other people's situations and go like, wow, we could do better for people.
Now, if you're looking to hear more from Andrew, he's got tour dates scheduled. He's got stops in Michigan, Ohio, Maryland, and California, all coming up real soon.
In just a matter of moments.
It's hard sometimes to be a guy that's a big dreamer.
Ryan Hall returns.
Being the honest guy that I am, I was like, well, I'm just going to put God down.
With a word to jumpstart your personal race.
It has the power to influence weight loss, boost your immune system, and improve brain function.
We've seen an explosion of data on the role of the gut microbiome in health.
The free Build a Better Gut booklet reveals the latest information about the gut microbiome. You'll discover how your gut affects the rest of your health.
The gut microbiome has been linked to depression and cancer and heart disease.
Learn how to build a stronger, healthier gut.
The microbiome, if it's in good composition, are really protecting us all the time from more invasive things.
Get the Build a Better Gut booklet, free from the Christian Broadcasting Network. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut.
you need to make sure that your microbes are working with you, not against you.
And if you order online, you'll get immediate access to the Build a Better Gut series, a digital copy of the booklet, and related bonus material. Build a Better Gut today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut for your free copy.
Here, we're committed to a heritage of rigorous scholarship dating back over 1,000 years.
And to a faith tradition dating back 1,000 more.
This is how we create a culture of inquiry where no topic is off limits.
And a culture of hope.
Anything's possible!
It's Christian leadership.
And it's changing the world for the better.
It's higher learning.
It's greater knowing.
It's what makes us whole.
It's what makes us Regent.
And welcome back to Studio 5. This week's show soundtrack comes from Lauren Daigle. Here's Rescue from her long-running hit album, Look Up Child. With that sample of Rescue, we are almost out of time for this episode of Studio 5. So here's a look at what we're working to bring you come next week.
My connection to the arts is music. I grew up singing in the church. That's how we communicate. That's how we relate.
It's an all-star cast in the Broadway musical turned Hollywood live-action feature film, Cats.
I was cast in 1981, just before we opened. I snapped my Achilles tendon, and I thought that that was my history with cats. But it turns out not to be.
Studio 5 takes you inside the production.
Tomorrow I start to sing my big number. Ta-da! Show business.
Directing Cats is like directing a group of world-class athletes.
Certainly hope you'll join us for that and so much more come next week. As for this week's show, we thought we would end the way we began. We're giving the final word to athlete Ryan Hall.
God is speaking to us if we're listening, you know? And so I just encourage people, like, however you hear from God the best, because it's different. Like, I hear really well when I'm physically exhausted, when I'm out running in the mountains. Like, these are times it's easy for me to connect with God. So what is it for you, you know? Like, how do you hear from God? When is it easy for you to connect with God? Is it in worship? Is it, you know, I don't know, doing out on the lake fishing, or what is it, you know? But just to get alone with God and have Him impart, like, vision. Because having that initial vision was so huge for me, because the road was hard. Like, developing my talent, cultivating it was not easy. And there were a lot of times when I was like, I'm done. I was like, I'm not running anymore. But I'd always reflect back on that vision and be like, if I haven't accomplished what I felt like God was telling me I was going to do, then I need to keep moving forward. So it just was something that allowed me to pick myself up failure after failure after failure.
Thank you, Ryan. That is a great final word for this edition of Studio 5 and this week's look at uplifting entertainment. Until next time, make time to uplift someone else around you. And then come on back and see where Studio 5 takes you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.